Hey everyone. So recently I've been asked more and more often, how do I master and mix my songs? And especially, what does my mastering for my music covers on YouTube look like? So I'm going to share with you my typical mastering chain. I'm going to encourage you to create your own version of that or your own version after understanding what each component is for. Before we look at the actual mastering channel, I want to say that don't simply copy everything that you see on my screen. I encourage you to try to understand why I do certain things, why I use certain tools, and what the purpose is of this specific compressor, what the purpose is of each individual step, rather than just copying my settings, which you might do, but it's probably going to sound better if you make your own mastering preset depending on how your mixes usually tend to sound. Right, so what works best for me in terms of views on YouTube are covers of songs that are just out a few hours or a few minutes even for that matter. And to get the most amount of views and the most amount of viewers on your video, it is important to try to be one of the first people who release a cover of that song. And when you're working that fast, it is easy to get caught up and try to rush everything, and in the end it's going to sound, well, a little bit bad. So what I think is going to make your covers on YouTube sound a little bit better is, first of all, practice. When a song has just come out, you're not going to have a lot of time practicing the song. But if you practice singing, playing the guitar, playing your instrument, whatever, mixing, mastering every single day, you will get better and faster in the process. And that really helped me be one of the fastest cover artists on the planet. And the second step is creating your own solid presets and even preset chains. I have presets for my guitars, I have presets for my vocals. Obviously, they're not going to work for every single cover that I'm doing, but if I'm doing a simple acoustic cover, I have 2 presets for my acoustic guitar that I know will make it sound decent. Always play around with the settings and try to make it sound better and nicer. But if you want to make it sound as good as possible in the shortest amount of time, then presets will really help you. But today I'm going to share with you my quick master channel and a few other tools that I like to use in mastering to make acoustic covers or covers in general sound good to go for YouTube as fast as possible. So if you don't have all the plugins that I have, just try to find alternatives and you will be able to make your own really good mastering chain. But it's important that you make this for your own voice, because every voice, every microphone has a different character. So I don't just use a preset that has a big name written on it just because it has this name, but rather I try to mix a song myself if I have a little bit more time to make a cover like that, and if I like the sound quite a lot, I'm gonna save this preset chain, and when I record a cover that needs just a quick fix, I'm gonna slap those presets on, change a few parameters here and there, like the threshold or threshold attack release on compressors and all that kind of stuff, the key of the pitch correction obviously, and then I'm good to go. I'm sure there's always more that I can do to make it sound better, but if I want to make it sound right in a very short amount of time, this is how I do it. Spend some time upfront creating these presets for yourself, and then you will have a much faster workflow when it comes to covers. And when I say I made these presets myself, it is really important to notice I'm not a professional or anything. I just try to make a song sound as good as I can with my ears, try to listen to what sounds good to me, and in the best case it's gonna sound good to the listener as well. And I think that is what mixing is about, making it sound as good as possible with the tools that you have. Let's get into the mastering chain. Right, so I'm gonna take you into one of my most recent projects, Overdrive Conan Gray cover, and we're gonna have a look at how I master the song. This is how it sounds without mastering.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess I lied. Diving off to the deep end, I can think of a reason.
What we see here on the left side is the vocals, and they have quite the hefty amount of stuff. It might not always be necessary, but I find that this preset really works well on my voice, brings out the best parts, and there are some plugins that I've included in Logic and some plugins that I paid for that I'm a big fan of, but we are here for the mastering channel. So let's look at what I'm doing right now. Right, so in the loudest parts of the song, it might start peaking here. If it peaks too high, then the first thing that I have in my channel here is this gain knob. It's a simple gain reduction in this case, and it's set to -7.5. You should set it the way that makes sense in your mixes. Many analog plugins sound their best at peak values of -18, maybe -20. So I try to, before I insert any other plugin, get the peak value there. So usually I do a gain reduction of 7 dB with this gain plugin. Just using this slider to turn down will not affect how much volume comes into these plugins, so you have to use a plugin like the gain plugin. In this case, there is no huge gain because I mixed it quite a low volume, but that doesn't matter because in the end we're going to bring up the volume, which is also a big part in mastering. Right, next thing is a simple EQ. This one just releases a little bit of low tension. It doesn't cut out any low end in a crazy way. It just reduces it slightly, ever so slightly. And I've noticed some areas, so I cut out a little bit, just 1 to 2 decibels at between 2 and 3K. And I add a little bit of high-end boost past 6K hertz. Try to do it where it sounds right for you. That always helps much more than using my values. I've tested this and this sounded right for me. It might sound awful on your mixes, so try to play with the sliders and listen to it. What I might do sometimes is reduce a little bit of the muddiness in this area, but the preset is set like this. The cuts here, they're very, very little cuts. There are maybe 1 decibel cuts. This is the heaviest, the furthest I will go, because there's not a lot of bass information. I only have acoustic guitar, so they're usually not that low, so everything below that is usually rumble. But I don't want to cut out everything because there might be something interesting. I'm just reducing it a little bit to get a little bit of more headroom. But depending on the instrumentation that you've chosen, this might look different for you. EQ cuts are very, very minuscule, because if it doesn't sound right before mastering, huge cuts might make it sound unnatural.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess
I'm gonna put all these files that are rendered out into a separate Google Drive folder so you can listen to what each step of the way sounds. If I let you listen to all of it, it's gonna make it a little bit too long in this video, but yeah, let's see. This is only called Quick Master because the purpose of this is to enhance it a little bit sonically, squeeze it a little bit without over compressing anything and getting it to a commercial loudness level. But I'm not attempting to make a radio level mix here. I'm just attempting to make a YouTube cover sound as good as I can in the shortest amount as possible. The next thing is Vitamin. It's a little sonic enhancer. And a lot of things that I would introduce at this section are like exciters or things like that. This is a multi-band enhancer that mostly enhances these bands in the middle and at the top, giving a little bit of more clarity and presence. This slider you can also widen the stereo image a little bit. And let's listen to how that sounds quickly. If you do not have this plugin, don't just randomly go there and buy it. Just try to find some nice mastering enhancer plugins that can boost a little bit of the harmonics in the song. Some harmonic distortion works out well to bring up overtones and stuff like that.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess I lied. Diving off to the deep end, I can think of a reason we should take our time.
The next thing I would introduce is some tape saturation or just some minor distortion, either here with this Logic Bitcrusher, which might sometimes sound a little bit too much. It might sometimes introduce some unwanted noise. So if I disable one of the plugins, it will probably be this one. But the Bitcrusher, it adds a little bit of tape warmth to it. What you can also do is in the delays. Where do I have them? In tape delay is also a stock plugin from Logic. You can get this clip threshold down, tempo sync off, and basically reduce so there is no delay at all. And everything that exceeds this threshold will start to clip. No feedback, no LFO. So all we are doing with this plugin, it's not adding any delay, but we are clipping a little bit and distorting the signal a little bit to bring out some pleasant harmonics. You can play with the dry and wet sliders. At this point, I'm using Bitcrusher or the tape delay to bring out some harmonics.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess I lied. off to the deep end.
Logic doesn't come with any tool that is called tape saturator or anything, but the Bitcrusher and the tape delay are some tools that can simulate this to a certain extent, and I think it definitely gives something to the audio. It glues it a little bit more together, just like the next thing that we are going to introduce now, a compressor. In this case, I'm using the supercharger, which is a pretty heavy compressor, but with a wet and dry knob. And I find wet, dry knobs very, very helpful. You can compress certain areas very heavily, but make sure that it's not overdone, over-compressed, and cutting out all of the dynamics. You can bring out parts that are too quiet without destroying the complete character of your performance. And especially with acoustic guitars, you have a lot of dynamic information there and you don't want to destroy it. So if you can, try to choose a compressor that has a wet, dry knob. If not, just try to not make it too heavy. This specific compressor doesn't give you too many different options, but we could also just take a random stock compressor. The goal of this is just to glue everything a little bit better together. I don't want any auto gain, and we bring the threshold down to where we can see something happening that doesn't overdo it. So it should be between 0 and 5, maximum in some peaks maybe between 5 and 10. For the ratio, I wouldn't go too high either.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess I lied. Diving off to the deep end.
You can see the supercharger also stays between 0 and 4 dB of gain reduction, and with a little bit of makeup gain, which you can also introduce in Logic's compressor, you can already bring up the loudness of the track quite a little bit. And here it also has an input-output slider, so it doesn't get too compressed. But yeah, this is the next step, a compressor. The goal of this is to reduce the dynamics a little bit so it doesn't jump out of the speakers in certain parts and gets lost in other parts. But instead there's going to be a nice steady flow, allowing some dynamics in, but not overdoing them so small speakers fail to reproduce the song in a nice way. With everything that we're doing here, try not to overdo it, because I think it always sounds better if you have a little more quiet sounding track that has more dynamics and sounds nicer overall, rather than a track that's just overblown. The last step that I might add, it's Fresh Air by Slate Digital. It's a free plugin, can really bring out some harmonics again, but compared to other exciters, it has mid-air and high air, and you can really change the character of the song, and you can couple them here. I might traditionally not go over 20. Usually I would be probably in the range of 12. If I overdo it, you can really hear the difference. But yeah, if you don't want to overdo it, just use it sparsely to add a little bit of spark, a little bit of pleasant high end.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess I lied.
The goal why I'm really explaining everything here a little bit in more detail is that you're not just going to go out and get all these plugins, but that you understand what they're doing so that you can use the stock plugins or the plugins that you bought, create your own quick master channels, because some of these might not be in my quick master channel, but I do switch up between them sometimes. Fresh Air, I might insert it if I feel like it lacks a little bit of presence. So you might or might not add it. Don't look too much at the names of the plugins that I'm using. Look at their functions and see why, and try to understand why it is I'm doing something. And if you could only use one plugin mastering to get it sound right, it would probably be a limiter, because that is the final step to get it to sound louder. Let's face it, this is the most important step that it does. The limiter makes it sound louder so that when a person clicks on your YouTube video, they really have a nice leveled video. The settings here are quite drastic, but you have to set them according to how loud your track already is. I would really recommend you to look at the attenuation or like the gain reduction meter. My computer can't handle filming and processing in Logic at the same time. We might start here with an out ceiling of minus 0.2 maybe. This is more important so that it doesn't clip when you convert it to MP3. And then we bring down the threshold. Everything above this threshold level will be compressed, and everything below that will be made louder consecutively. So bringing down the threshold brings up the volume of the track. Other limiters might have a gain knob here. And we want to bring it down to an attenuation that is not really higher than 3. Let's see in the chorus here.
Running down the street, no left, right, left, right. I don't wanna see no red light, red light.
The limiter is one of the most important things in master, if not the most important thing.
Only met on the weekend, said I'm not catching feelings. Oh, I guess I lied. Diving off to the deep end, I can think.
Don't have this compressor that is called L2 by Waves. You can just use any stock limiter that you have. Limiter, sorry, not compressor. For example, the limiter in Logic. It looks a little bit different, and instead of a threshold knob, we have this gain knob. But essentially what we're doing is the same. We're pushing this one up, and that is going to drive the signal up, and we have this reduction meter, and again, don't go too far. The output, I'm going to set it to minus 0.2 again. You can choose between precision and legacy mode. Let's try legacy here. Okay, this limiter can't go as high as I want to, so I'm gonna put a second one. And shows you how much the gain reduction is. And again, we're going for around 2 to 4 decibels. Maybe in one peak it can go higher, but I wouldn't go much higher than that. Right, that's my mastering chain. I hope this is helpful to you, and if it is, leave a like. Right, I truly hope you enjoyed this and this provided you some value. If it did, press like and subscribe, and you might as well share this or save this video so you can watch it again to create your own preset. I hope this is helpful, and if it is, well, you know where to find me. Goodbye.